What's up, future shred lords? Welcome back. Down to the fingers. We're going to be getting into a real quick lesson here on the Pentatonics by request, of course, from the Twitters. They just want one without all the shred and, not too in depth, just kind of the major broad strokes, if you will. And then I'm going to show another little section on compound arpeggios at the end for the more advanced players. There's another question, just jamming them in here together. So the first one here, obviously, is the Pentatonics. We're going to be playing in the key of G major. Third fret, obviously. And the first thing is just what is a pentatonic scale? It's when I take a major scale and I drop it down to 5 notes. So I get 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 1. Those are the scale degrees, by the way. The first degree, second degree, third degree, fifth degree, sixth degree, and first degree, of course, Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Mixolydian, and Aeolian. Now, obviously, the Aeolian position is what everybody knows, right? So, I don't think I need to get into that too much, but you can clearly see that's just one position of the actual scale, and the idea here is modalization, right? So if I start off in the first one, and then I convert that just going up, right, so that kind of is the idea of modalization. When I move to the next one, 2, 3, 5, 6, 1, 2. Right, moving to the third. Right, so all I'm doing is just basically moving to the next note and then just playing through the sequence again. So instead of going 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 1, I'm going to go 2, 3, 5, 6, 1, 2, and then 3, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, right? So you get the idea here is all I'm doing is taking essentially this first note and moving it to the end. Right? So and that's, of course, the octave there. Didn't quite get it there with my finger. I'm getting rusty here. So, I mean, that right there is huge. Too many people skip over it. Obviously, the actual sort of interval jumps, whole step, minor third there, right? Step and a half. Whole step, minor third. And then, of course, you're back to the start again. That stuff right there is something that almost everybody skips over. And then they wonder why they struggle a little bit to sort of really internalize this information right there without sort of like a point of reference, let's put it that way. Everything else gets 10 times more complicated. So if you can understand what I just did there, you're good to go, right? Because now you know the Ionian position, and then there's Dorian, and then there's Phrygian, right? Of course, Mixolydian. Into Aeolian there. And of course, back to the start, Ionian. Okay, so that right there is probably got to be the worst of the worst with respect to the theory of it. Next is basically expanding the pentatonic. In this case, we're going to add 3 notes. So anytime there's a whole step, I'm going to fill it in chromatically. And whenever there's a minor third interval, I'm going to borrow from the major scale, which is... So I get this configuration and then this configuration as far as the fingerings are concerned. So on and so forth. It's always the same sequence. It's always going to be this one and then this one when you have 2 minor thirds stacked on top of each other. Okay, so another huge one there that allows for, much more speed, if you will, right? So you're not just going, right? Now, of course, I'm a little rusty here, but whatever. You get the idea is that once you sort of kind of add the third note, you can play things a lot faster because it's hammer-ons and pull-offs now. Right, so that's me adding in a bit of a major scale there, but you get the point. Is that is going to help out huge too, just in terms of phrasing, right? And of course, as soon as you start to master this scale, you'll be like, now if you know what that is, it's just Summer Breeze. I think that's the typo negative version. That whole sequence really is all from the pentatonic scale, and the idea here is, right, I can now play these things essentially from the lowest string. In this case, that right there is Mixolydian from here. Okay, so I get it. You're probably like, what? You just lost me there. But don't worry about that so much. But of course, if you're like, oh, that's the note D, and that's the note D, I'm going to get the same configuration. You're like, 2 whole steps, 2 minor thirds, then you got 2 more whole steps. Okay, so, I mean, again, we're into like the theory area, but in a way that's practical. You're like, I know where that position comes from. Obviously, that's going to be very helpful. If you're like, that's the 5th degree there. Right, another really useful tool for 3 notes per string of the position where you are, Mixolydian, right? So that's another huge one for arpeggios, for chords. So it's all kind of snuck in there. And then, of course, the next sort of level up is to break out of this idea. Too many people do stuff like this. They're just like, move to the next position. Right, which is not bad, obviously. And the next sort of like level above that is doing them together. Synergy, right? See how this original scale kind of pulls back once you move to the Dorian position, right? Into Ionian here. Into Dorian. It kind of pulls itself down to the Ionian position. It wants to resolve there, right? Of course, I'm not going to get into that, but when you're doing like Phrygian and obviously Mixolydian, they're going to sort of have the same tendencies. So that's a really big one when it comes to actually creating good phrasing, but that's another whole lesson in and of itself. So that's obviously very useful, just to send one and then down the next one. And of course, my favorite is starting to just, you know, get rid of that idea altogether and just bring them all together in sort of like one piece, especially in like structured chunks. So if I move up to like the Phrygian position here, let's do that. This one is, right, so in this case, I've got this one, right, and then, oh, damn. Now, obviously, you can see that that's going to be way more useful as far as the soloing idea, as far as like getting into something fast, using the pentatonics. And of course, you don't need to do that chromaticism in there. You can just... Right, so again, notice how I go back to the root there to resolve from the Phrygian position. Again, that's very important with respect to tension and release and phrasing. So don't skip over that. If it sounds like you're where you're ending is just like hanging out there with no real sort of like closure, find the note that closes the loop and then end on that note, and you'll be like, okay, I'm understanding what he's talking about now. You just saw me do it there, so you can see the importance. But that right there is how you should be practicing them. I've done this one a million times where you move up in whole steps. Or maybe coming down. That's another good one. Obviously, still very linear. You can do it in, obviously, a chromatic style. Right, there's a whole bunch of ways of doing it like that. But again, you're sort of running into a specific limitation. Instead, I'd be like... Okay, now, again, slowly, that's me starting off in the Ionian position with the pentatonic scale. Whole step, major scale fragment. Moving up to the whole step here again. That comes from Dorian, right? Right, so again... Okay, so again, I'm just running through the basics here. You know. And you can just keep going. Obviously, you can do 3 notes here. Again, you can see that I'm taking this collection of notes. I have this, and I have this. So why not go? Right? I kind of get it that people will be like, well, you know, I didn't think about it that way. Neither did I for about 15 years. So it's really easy to get tunnel vision and just keep doing the same things, but that's just it. You get the law of diminishing returns in that case, and then all of a sudden you're way up the creek, right? So I think that pretty much covers it for the pentatonic stuff as much as you need to know. There's the basic theory, basically the breakdown, right? And the idea of modalization. And that's just me, of course, moving through all 5 positions. I'm not doing anything overly exciting except expanding the idea. Again, you're using the same sort of principles over and over and over again. And then all I'm doing is really sort of like expanding how I approach it. If I came here, again, from the major, up to Dorian. Again, I'm basically doing the entire thing in Ionian and Dorian, right? In this case. But now I'm starting to add in like the idea of sort of sliding in a more unconventional spot. And if you keep practicing like that all the time, obviously you're going to see massive gains, right? So, I mean, without getting into like this really, really complicated lesson about pentatonics and all the rest of that stuff, that is really, in my opinion, the way that you practice them is that you're sort of going to match up, you know, obviously your own sort of skill level type deal. But instead of just sort of moving to the Mixolydian position, and doing something like that, you know, you're going to move up to Aeolian in this case, then down to Mixolydian, then down to Phrygian, before ending in Ionian there, right? And of course, transitioning through the Dorian position there. Those 3 notes there from the whole pentatonic chunk, remember 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. That right there is going to open a lot of doors for you, of course. And when you're ready, just start playing things a lot faster. As far as the compound arpeggios are concerned, this is another one I got. This one is a little bit more complicated. Obviously, compound arpeggios are when you take 2 smaller arpeggios and you kind of jam them together. So there's like the style in Frank Gambale here. So it's like... Right, so stuff like that. Again, the compound arpeggio was at the very beginning. Right there, right? So that's technically from the, yes, that's the Lydian position. Moving up. Now that one there. Comes from the minor 7, obviously. That's from the Gambale arpeggio. Okay, so I just took that really, really small chunk there and then did 3 in 1 essentially. One more time. Right, and just keep practicing. Now, things like that obviously are a lot more challenging with respect to the picking and this, that, and everything else, but you know, it's just kind of part of it. I think my beard's stuck to either my guitar strap or the mic, and it's driving me nuts. That's the problem with having this big Grizzly Adams beard, is it's pretty wild. I'm not gonna lie, I love it. Just makes me feel like a caveman right now. So, you know, that's one. Obviously, the next one is just like compound arpeggios where you're sort of more built around speed. I'd use the other one for like more meaningful passages where I want to slow things down, but of course create a more complex and lush sort of arpeggio instead of just going, which sounds great, you know, obviously it's a cool sound, but if you're like, much cooler, right? So the next one obviously is sort of built around speed. In this case, I'm only going to use 2 notes, right? On the low E string. Then I'm going to slide up. And down. So there's the compound essentially is I'm borrowing it from the Mixolydian position. In this case, I'm using the A Mixolydian position, which was between B minor, D major, of course. Right, so the thing here is I'm now, and I'm just doing it down there because it's easier for me to see kind of thing. There's my minor arpeggio. Sliding up, so that's basic classic Gambale there. Right, and then you can kind of, you can do it a little more insane if you want. I don't know if I quite got that. Close enough, right? So you get things like that. Again, I'm basically using the Mixolydian positions and the Aeolian positions from the minor pentatonic. That's another really useful idea. Those all come from the pentatonic scale. Right? So, I mean, again, another way of looking at the pentatonics, but I didn't want to sort of get things too insane there, but it's worth noticing for sure and worth talking about too. I'm trying to do it slow and then, of course, try to speed it up, and my brain's like, bro, don't be an idiot. Okay, we'll just leave it there. I'll leave it on a mistake for once in the video. No, I can't. Of course not. And you can do 3 in 1. Right, so I mean, it's kind of hard to do it and talk at the same time. I kind of have to focus a little more, but I think you get the main idea. We don't need the shred factor. We just need to sort of understand that there's the ones from the Mixolydian position, sliding up, bar. That comes from Mixolydian 3 notes per string. Another good one just to come down the scale. Right, so you get the idea. You don't have to just kind of do that. I almost got it. I could have went either way with the major or diminished there, but looks like Jesse has to practice a little bit more. I've been really slacking lately because I've been too busy doing some other stuff. Not an excuse, but you get the idea there. It's essentially, I'm starting to take two smaller arpeggios, this one and this one, and put them together, right, with a few extra notes. Right, and you're off to the races. Of course, you can just right, and there it is, done deal. So with the summing up here, essentially start off with your standard pentatonic idea. Into your arpeggios. It only takes me 7 attempts, but we get it at the end. There it is. Get practicing, you lazy bastard. See you in the next one.